I am the cannon fodder male supporting role in the book, after the male and female leads get their happy ending. I also successfully win over my beloved and marry the devoted second female lead, Willow. But what I never expected was, 7 years later, the relationship between the main couple fell apart. The male lead, Makoto, left in anger. From that point on, my wife suddenly began dressing up frequently and practicing yoga. 1 month later, Willow went shopping with her friend. And when she came back, her stockings were gone. 3 months later, my son stole my tender document and gave it to Makoto. Half a year of my hard work went down the drain. At that moment, I decided to call the police. Chapter 1. Willow shot me an annoyed look as I escorted the 2 police officers out. Before leaving, the officers were still reminding us, keep an eye on your child. Not everything can be taken casually. Something as important as a tender document, involving such a large amount, if anyone else had taken it, or if it belonged to someone else, it would constitute economic crime. Jack was terrified, his little face pale. As soon as the officers left, he burst into loud tears. My mother-in-law, who had moved into our home to recover from an illness, was also furious. She cried as she scolded, "Back then, your father and I already opposed you marrying him. Just look at the kind of men you married. Other than Jack, it's just me in this house. Who exactly is he trying to have arrested? Your mother or his own son? Divorce. You must divorce him. If you don't, I'll cut ties with you." Mom. Willow sounded both aggrieved and powerless. At that moment, the sound of someone entering the password came from outside the door. The door opened, and Makoto hurried in as if he owned the place. He frowned and asked, "What's going on?" "Auntie called me saying the police came." "Willow, what happened?" "It's all because of him," my mother-in-law snapped viciously, pointing at me. "George insisted that someone in the house stole his tender document and gave it to you." Without a word, he called the police. He almost got Jack taken away. "Don't you think he's lost his mind?" Willow pressed her lips together and said, "Mom, that's enough. Take Jack upstairs first." Though still fuming, my mother-in-law carried the sobbing Jack upstairs, muttering curses under her breath. The bewildered Makoto finally seemed to understand what was going on. He looked at me with a half-amused, half-irritated expression and said, "A tender document? You think the reason I beat you is because I stole a look at your tender document? George, believe it or not, I've never even opened that document." "George, are you really such a sore loser? If you've got a problem, come at me. Taking it out on your wife and child, what kind of man does that make you?" It was as if those words struck a chord deep in Willow's heart. She looked at me with disappointment and said, "George, do you really think Makoto won just because his bid was lower than yours?" Chapter 2. Yesterday was the bidding meeting. Makoto and I were competitors. He won. I lost. If you lose, you accept it, that's only fair. But the price Makoto submitted was too precise. That number made everyone on my team immediately suspicious. Did someone leak the price? I reassured them, saying it was impossible, just a coincidence. But the moment I got home, I started checking the surveillance footage. My study doesn't have a password, but Willow and I have always maintained proper boundaries. I never touch her personal belongings casually. Likewise, she would never intrude into my private space. Under that kind of mutual understanding, Jack had also behaved well. But the footage showed that 3 days ago, Jack entered my study, took my tender document out for an hour, and then returned it. Yesterday was Makoto's celebration banquet. Willow, Jack, and Willow's mother all attended. I sat in the living room all night, without turning on the lights. Close to midnight, they came back. Jack had fallen asleep, and Willow was carrying him. My mother-in-law said, "Makoto has it hard on his own, busy with his career and work, with no one by his side to care whether he's warm or cold. You two grew up together. After all, your bond is different. It's only right to check in on him more often. Happiness, sometimes you have to fight for it yourself." Willow had a smile on her face, her expression light and relaxed, as she gave a soft mm. The living room lights were switched on. When they saw me, they were startled. My mother-in-law shot me a glare, let out a cold snort, and went upstairs. Willow pressed her lips together slightly, her voice cool as she said, "Why aren't you resting yet? Go to bed early. I'll take Jack upstairs first." I didn't say a single word. I sat there from night until dawn, until they woke up, until they started having breakfast. Right in front of them, I dialed the police. "Hello, I'd like to report a case. Someone stole my tender document." Chapter 3. Willow said, "George, do you really think Makoto won just because his bid was lower than yours?" "No, of course I knew that wasn't the case. A single quote alone wouldn't decide a project of this scale." I shrugged and said, "Then Willow, you tell me, how did Makoto's company, which hasn't even been established for half a year, manage to break through and beat everyone else?" "George, what the hell do you mean? Makoto couldn't hold it in anymore. His eyes burned with anger as he glared at me, but I didn't even spare him a glance. I looked straight at Willow and said calmly, "Do I really need to spell it out for you? Without your father's approval and support, how could he have won the bid? It was you. You went to President Liu and begged him for Makoto." Willow bit her lower lip tightly. Makoto's face was full of disbelief. He looked at Willow, shaking his head repeatedly. "What does he mean? Willow, what did you do? Why would you go beg him for me? Didn't I tell you I could handle this on my own? Why would you still do something like that?" Willow's eyes turned red, her voice slightly hoarse as she said, "Makoto, starting a business isn't as easy as you think. You need a breakthrough win. You need something that makes everyone notice you. Otherwise, you don't even qualify to enter the game. So Willow sacrificed me to give him that breakthrough win. As for my son, Jack, he was just an extra touch on top of it." I looked away and went upstairs. Jack was curled up under the blanket, still sobbing. The moment my mother-in-law saw me, she shouted, "Who told you to come in? Get out." I said, "I need 5 minutes." She snapped, "What are you going to do now? Haven't you made Jack suffer enough?" I replied expressionlessly, 5 minutes. I agree to divorce Willow. My mother-in-law froze. She asked, "Are you serious?" I nodded, "I am." Her face was full of suspicion and disbelief. She looked at me, then at Jack. After struggling for a moment, she gritted her teeth, stood up, and walked out. I closed the door and sat down by Jack's bed. He had wrapped himself completely in the blanket. I didn't scold him. I simply asked, "Are you scared?" The only response I got was louder crying. I said, "Looks like you do know what fear feels like. Jack, remember this feeling. Don't make the same mistake again." Jack pulled down the blanket. His little face was flushed, tears streaming down as he said, "I've never stolen anything. I've never stolen from anyone." I asked, "Then why did you steal from me?" He stammered, "This is my home, and you're my dad." I nodded and let out a soft "oh," then said, "So what you're saying is, being your father just means I'm the unlucky one?" For a moment, Jack froze, confusion filling his eyes. I looked at him and said, word by word, "Jack, remember this, if one day you truly break the law, neither your mother nor Makoto will be able to help you. When you do something wrong, the only one who bears the responsibility is yourself." I stood up and pressed my hand lightly on his head. "Jack, as your father, this is the last lesson I'm teaching you." Chapter 4. The moment I opened the door, I saw my mother-in-law grabbing Willow and shouting, "Even after all this, you still don't want a divorce? How did I end up raising a daughter so blinded by love?" "Mom." Willow lowered her eyes and said, "Go inside and take care of Jack first." Her mother glared at me, as if she wanted to tear me apart. I simply pushed past her and walked out. Willow followed right behind me downstairs. Makoto had already left. I didn't stop walking. I headed straight for the door. Willow called out to me, "George, what exactly are you trying to do? Since you already know everything, why did you call the police? Jack is your son. For the sake of your pride over winning or losing, are you really going to ignore your own flesh and blood?" I stopped and asked, "Last month, when you took Jack out, you were with Makoto, weren't you?" Willow froze for a moment. She looked confused and said, "Why are you suddenly bringing this up? What's the point of talking about this now?" There was no point. I just wanted to tell her, "You probably forgot, when you left that day, you were wearing stockings. But when you came back, they were gone. And guess what? The day Makoto invited us to dinner, Jack found those stockings at his place first. He thought I didn't notice, so he secretly stuffed them into his pocket." Willow was clearly flustered, but she still tried to argue back. "What are you trying to say? Are you accusing me and Makoto?" "George, not everyone is as dirty as you think. I don't care about the two of you." I cut her off. "I just want to know, when a child not even 6 years old hides something like that, what kind of image does his mother have in his eyes?" Chapter 5. After leaving the house, I didn't go back to the company. Instead, I bought the earliest flight and headed to the capital. By dusk, I arrived at my destination. It was Sophia's driver who picked me up. There were all kinds of rumors outside, that Sophia was having an affair with her driver, Simon. People said her marriage with Makoto had fallen apart because of this, but I didn't believe it. I had known Simon before. He was the kind of person who was so upright that he came off as blunt and uncompromising. People around him often said he lacked emotional intelligence and didn't understand social niceties. A friend of his was being cheated on. Everyone knew, but no one was willing to say anything. People even advised Simon not to meddle in someone else's business, but he insisted on speaking up. Sure enough, afterward, that friend cut ties with him, blaming him for ruining a relationship that had lasted several years. But Simon said, "The reason I told him is because, as his friend, it was the right thing to do. If he resents me for it, that just means he's not worthy of being my friend. That's his loss, not mine." A person like that understands right and wrong, and also the cost of his choices. When I got out of the car, Simon reminded me. President Kim is not in a good mood. She probably won't give you much time. I nodded and thanked him. After pausing to think for 2 seconds, I handed the proposal in my hand to the secretary behind me. Sophia Kim was sitting not far away, resting her chin on one hand, her expression cool and distant. When she saw me, she blinked and said, "George, long time no see. I was quite surprised when I got your call. What's wrong? Did Makoto latch onto you again?" The certainty and sarcasm in her tone were completely undisguised. Back then, both she and Willow had a crush on Makoto. Makoto chose her. Now that their relationship had fallen apart, he turned back to Willow again. What a tangled mess of emotions. And with me, Willow's husband, added into the mix, it was practically a battlefield. So I nodded and said bluntly, "Yes, Makoto took the project I had. So I'd like to ask, President Kim, can I get a share of the International Trade Corridor project?" The ICE project Makoto had successfully bid for was in direct competition with the International Trade Corridor. He chose ICE to declare war on Sophia Kim. He wanted to show her that even if he didn't stay in the Kim group, as long as he wanted to, he could still build something successful, and Sophia clearly knew this. There wasn't a trace of surprise on her face. She said frankly, "Anyone can take on a project. Why should I give it to you?" I nodded in agreement. Shrugging, I said, "But my wife helped your husband. Shouldn't you return the favor and help me out?" Sophia froze for a moment. The next second, she laughed out loud. "George, you're interesting. How come I never realized you were this interesting before?" Willow, Makoto, Sophia, and we were all high school classmates. Back then, Sophia only had eyes for Makoto. She didn't notice anyone else. Later, to be with her, Makoto agreed to her father's conditions, signed that almost harsh prenuptial agreement, and naturally entered the Kim group. To outsiders, it looked like he had risen to the top in one step, marrying the Kim family's daughter and soaring from then on. But only we knew the truth. He called it joining the company, but in reality, it was no different from marrying into the family. His once sharp edge was gradually worn down. The brilliance that once made Sophia look up to him slowly turned into cautious compliance under the rules of the Kim family and the pressure of her father. And so, the once high-spirited, gifted man in Sophia's eyes eventually faded into mediocrity. She began to see him as weak, as ordinary, as no longer shining the way he once did. Even the way she looked at him gradually carried a hint of undisguised contempt. So she found the fitness trainer interesting, the bartender at the bar interesting, even her daughter's swimming coach interesting. As she spoke, she stood up and tied her hair back. "I remember back in school, you loved racing, didn't you?" Before I could process it, she tossed me a set of car keys. "How about a race? If you win, the project is yours." Chapter 6. The key landed in my palm. Sophia stared straight at me. The secretary said worriedly, "Mr. Wong, let's go back." I patted her reassuringly. "It's fine." After putting on my helmet, Sophia and I got into our cars. I took 1 minute to familiarize myself with the entire vehicle. "Ready?" I nodded. The engines roared at the same time. The two cars shot forward like arrows released from a bow. The intense force slammed me back into the seat. The scenery outside the window instantly stretched into blurred streaks of color. I pulled far ahead. At the end of the first straight, I held the inside line, keeping Sophia half a car length behind me the whole time. The roar of the engine exploded in my ears. That long-lost thrill surged up my spine like electricity, as if every drop of blood in my body had been ignited. Before entering the corner, I jerked the steering wheel sharply. The car hugged the inside line almost perfectly, the tires letting out a sharp screech. Out of the turn, accelerate. Everything was flawless. I clung tightly to the curve of the track, but at the very moment I exited the corner, Sophia's car surged up with a tricky angle. Her outer tires scraped against the guardrail, sparks bursting into the night with a harsh grinding sound. She overtook me. I stayed right on her tail, but she blocked off every possible chance to pass. The final corner, this was my last opportunity. Just before entering the turn, Sophia's car shifted slightly toward the outside. She left me a gap, barely enough for a single chance. This wasn't a mistake. It was a naked provocation, a taunt. My pupils contracted as I gripped the steering wheel tightly. In a split second, the opportunity could vanish. Closer, closer. As long as I floored the accelerator, as long as I squeezed past along her car, I could win this race. Chapter 7. I lost. My foot left the accelerator and, gently yet steadily, pressed down on the brake. Sophia's car sped off. Soon, even the taillights disappeared from sight. I stared out the window. There was nothing but darkness. I rolled down the window, and the cold wind howled in. By the time I reached the finish, Sophia was already leaning against her car, waiting for me. Compared to her earlier excitement, her expression had now turned indifferent. She said, "You lost." She said. You had a chance to win, but you gave it up. I nodded. I asked. Heading down the mountain. She said. Why? We spoke at the same time. She looked at me, frowning slightly. George, you should understand, some opportunities can only be seized if you're willing to go all out. That made me laugh. In this world, there aren't many things worth risking my life for, she asked. Not even this project. I shook my head. President Kim, it's just a project, a business deal. If this one doesn't work out, I'll do something else. The world is big. One project won't decide my life or death. Just like Willow. Just like our marriage. Did I really not care about what happened between her and Makoto? Of course not. When I saw the surveillance footage, I was so furious my whole body trembled. That feeling, like being betrayed by the entire world, burned through my chest and spread to every part of me, almost consuming my sanity. I wanted to end everything with my own hands. I wanted to drag her, Makoto, and this absurd, ridiculous marriage into the abyss with me, but I knew I couldn't do that. I sat there from day to night, and from night to dawn. I distanced myself and thought it through. Life is often unsatisfactory. Marriage isn't always graceful. Loyalty wavers, promises fail, and even intimacy can turn into a weapon that hurts you. What I went through wasn't some unique, world-shattering tragedy. It was just an ordinary collapse among countless others. Tomorrow, the sun would still rise. Adults would wake early and go to work. Children would wake early and go to school. The world would keep running in order. It wouldn't pause for even a moment because of you. So why should you let something like this determine your life or death? I looked at Sophia and smiled. If every project required me to risk my life to win it, President Kim, that would only mean I'm incompetent. Sophia paused. Then she rolled her eyes. To be honest, you just chickened out. I laughed and nodded. Yeah, I did, I said. With the way I usually do things, I shouldn't have agreed to your bet in the first place. Or rather, I came to you with ulterior motives. Sophia. Makoto's sudden reappearance did annoy me quite a bit. Sophia narrowed her eyes and leaned closer. George, she said. So only Willow is worth risking your life for? I paused for a moment, then shook my head. Not at all. Chapter 8. In my second year of high school, I transferred to the school where Willow Lu studied and became her classmate. I was one of the underprivileged students sponsored by the Lu family. At 16, Makoto lost his only remaining family member. His father had been comrades in arms with Willow's father. Willow's father personally went to bring Makoto back to the Lu family, worried that he wouldn't adapt to a new school and a new environment. They selected a group of sponsored students to attend school with him. I was one of them. At first, I had no interaction with any of them, until one day, Willow gave me 100 yuan and asked me to eat with her. She deliberately acted close, handing me the milk tea she had already drunk halfway through. But from the corner of her eye, she kept looking at Makoto and Sophia, who were joking around not far away. Compared to Willow's gentle personality, Makoto clearly preferred Sophia, the kind of girl who bickered with him like a playful rival. Willow kept hoping that Makoto would look at her, that he would care, that he would get angry, but he didn't. Makoto only glanced at her indifferently, then continued joking with Sophia. Willow's expression dimmed, and she put down her chopsticks. I finished my food and asked, "Aren't you going to eat?" She shook her head. "I don't have an appetite," I asked. "Then can I take it?" Willow subconsciously asked. "Do you have a pet at home?" I said. "No, I can heat it up and eat it tomorrow." From that day on, Willow often fed me fruits she couldn't finish, lunches and snacks she didn't like. People started whispering, wondering if Willow liked me. Makoto was clearly annoyed. He clarified. "Of course not." He came to find me and warned me word by word. "George, Willow is getting close to you just to provoke me. Don't misunderstand, and don't get any inappropriate ideas about her." He sounded like he was already her guardian, but Willow suddenly appeared and snapped back irritably. "Who do you think you are? What gives you the right to meddle in my business?" Makoto, both angry and frustrated, said. "Am I wrong? Dare you say you're not doing this just to provoke me?" Willow bit her lip and asked. "Then did it work? Did I make you upset?" Makoto avoided her gaze. He sighed and said, "Willow, I only see you as a younger sister. I just hope you won't make the wrong choices just to provoke me." At that moment, the light in Willow's eyes dimmed, the corners of her eyes slowly turning red, but I pulled her into my arms and stepped forward, casually digging at my ear as I said, "Makoto, what if it's not that she got close to me to provoke you, but that I got close to her because I have feelings for her? Either way, it doesn't matter to me. As long as she needs me, I'll be by her side." Makoto hadn't expected me to say that. Furious, he turned and left. I let go of Willow and said calmly, "Aren't you going after him?" Willow shook her head. "Let's go eat." Chapter 9. George. A sudden shout rang out. Sophia tilted her head, looking past me, her expression unreadable. I turned around. Willow had already rushed over. She forcefully pushed Sophia and snapped angrily. "What are you two doing?" I frowned and raised my hand to stop her. "Why are you here?" She bit her lip, looking at me, her hands clenched tightly. "That's what I should be asking you. Makoto said you came to see Sophia." I didn't believe him. "George, what exactly are you trying to do?" "George." Another furious roar. Now everyone was here. Makoto gritted his teeth, pointing at Sophia and me. "What exactly did you two do?" I felt speechless. This kind of entanglement was pointless. I turned and walked toward the car, but Willow blocked my path. Her face flushed as she demanded again. "You haven't answered me yet." I had no patience left to waste on her. I moved around her, ready to leave, but she refused to let it go, grabbing my sleeve and not letting go. "George, explain yourself." I completely lost my patience. I grabbed her wrist, trying to pull her away. She said with a pained, aggrieved tone, "You're hurting me." The next second, Makoto suddenly stepped forward, shielding her. "Didn't you hear? You're hurting her. Is this how you usually treat your wife?" I looked at him, my tone calm to the point of coldness, but the words came out like bullets fired from a gun. Word by word, I said, "To hell with the wife. To hell with that pair of bastards." Makoto instantly flew into a rage and threw a punch at me, but in the very next second, slap, Sophia struck Makoto across the face. The air fell deathly silent. Startled, Willow almost instinctively raised her hand to touch Makoto's face and asked anxiously, "Makoto, are you okay?" Makoto shook his head, but his expression turned extremely grim. It was as if that slap had shattered his composure. Gritting his teeth, he looked at me and said, "George, if you've got something against me, come at me. Why drag Sophia into this? Are you trying to get back at me, or humiliate me? Why use such despicable tactics? You want Sophia? Fine, she's yours." "George." "Makoto." Two sharp warnings, Willow with reddened eyes, and Sophia with a cold expression, but Makoto laughed. He asked Sophia, "What, already can't wait?" Willow choked up. "Makoto, stop. George, let's go home." "You're not going anywhere." Sophia blocked my path. Willow bit her lip and said, "He's my husband." Sophia rolled her eyes and replied, "Oh really? Then the one who was protecting you just now was my husband." The two stood in fierce opposition, like drawn swords clashing. Makoto's face darkened. "Sophia, don't project your filthy thoughts onto us. I'm not like you. Willow and I are just ordinary friends." "No, wait, ugh, forget it. That's why I say this is ridiculous." I pinched the bridge of my nose and said, "Enough. Aren't you embarrassed? Do you think you're in some idle drama?" "Willow, you know what you're doing, and I know what you're doing. There's no need to pretend in front of me." "Makoto, that applies to you too." Chapter 10. In the end, I secured the International Trade Corridor project. Just as I was about to board the plane, Sophia's secretary called. "President Kim would like to invite you to the company tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a detailed discussion." I didn't know what made Sophia change her mind, and I didn't care. I immediately had my team fly over overnight. After a full day of detailed discussions the next day, 3 days of revising the proposal, we signed the contract 5 days later. When leaving, Sophia and I were on the same flight. She said she was going to visit her daughter. She asked me, "How old is your son?" "Almost 6. Is he well behaved?" "Mischievous." "Is that so?" "Boys are always mischievous. Unlike my daughter, she's obedient and clingy." It felt surreal. I had never imagined that one day, I would be sitting with Sophia, casually talking about our children. She brought a small gift for her daughter. I didn't buy anything for Jack. She scolded me. "That won't do. Kids need surprises. If you bring nothing, he won't even look forward to you coming home." I nodded indifferently, but after getting off the plane, I still turned into a gift shop and bought a toy. Yesterday, Jack called me. After the call connected, he refused to speak. "Jack, if you don't say anything, I'm hanging up." Suddenly, he started crying. At first, it was soft, broken sobs. Then it grew louder and louder. Crying, he asked, "Are you abandoning me? You're not coming home anymore, right? Then, can you at least come to the kindergarten gate and secretly look at me?" To say I didn't care would be a lie. Over the years, I had owed Jack a lot. His birth had been an accident. Back then, my career had just started. It was the busiest time. Originally, Willow and I had agreed to wait 2 more years before having a child, but she poked holes in the protection and only told me after she got pregnant. She said it was her mother's idea, that if my business succeeded, I might change my feelings. So she resorted to this. But since she was already pregnant, although I felt helpless, there was still a sense of joy at becoming a father. After all, he was my child, my own flesh and blood. After becoming pregnant, Willow's temper worsened significantly. Even though I hired 2 nannies and agreed to let her mother move in to take care of her, And even though I took meticulous care of her whenever I returned home, Willow still lost her temper constantly. From small things like the food not suiting her taste, to bigger things like me coming home 10 minutes late, anything could trigger her breakdown. I was already overwhelmed juggling work and family, but she would call me again and again, making up all sorts of reasons for me to come home immediately. If I didn't stay with her, she accused me of not loving her, of not caring about the child. I was worn down, mentally and physically exhausted. When I found myself unable to balance my career and family, I even considered giving up my career, until she made me abandon that thought. Because during the startup phase, money was tight, but she insisted on staying in a top-tier postpartum care center that cost hundreds of thousands a month. I tried to explain it to her gently, but she accused me. I went through so much suffering to give you a child, and you think I'm not worth it? You think spending money on me is a waste? You're not the one giving birth, you can afford to not care. When I couldn't leave a business negotiation, she scolded me. Men only pretend to be gentlemen and good people until the woman gives birth. When my career started to improve and she wanted control over the finances, she hysterically shouted, "To give you a child, I sacrificed my youth and damaged my body, this is what you owe me." And so on. It was as if I had forced her to have the child, as if the child didn't even need to call her mother, as if, because she had given birth, I owed her for the rest of my life. But if you really looked closely, it was she who had calculated everything from the start. Now she was using giving me a child as leverage to control me. In truth, if she hadn't wanted to give birth, she could have chosen not to. She always had full autonomy over that decision. At that moment, I suddenly realized, a debt that can never be repaid is not one worth trying to repay. I shouldn't let her dictate my choices anymore. Chapter 11. So I made a firm decision. I arranged for a nanny for Jack and shifted my focus back to my career. As for those unreasonable demands, I ignored them completely. Willow's mother called me heartless, said I was the most irresponsible father she had ever seen. But so what? It was just Jack. Still, he was inevitably affected. Willow's mother would often tell him, "Your father doesn't treat you well. He doesn't even want you." The first time I heard it, I reminded her. The second time, I warned her seriously. The third time, I asked her to leave the house. That was when we had a fierce argument. And from that moment on, I asked Willow for a divorce. Later, Makoto returned to the country. Jack liked this uncle very much. He carried Jack on his back to amusement parks, bought him snacks, and patiently taught him how to ride a bike. One day, Jack asked me, "Dad, can you make toys, like little cars or airplanes?" I said no. He immediately turned away in anger. He said, "Uncle Makoto can. Why can't you?" I wasn't a particularly good father, but I still did my best to make time for him. I told him bedtime stories, sometimes one, sometimes two, and he would obediently lie down and fall asleep. But after Makoto appeared, even that stopped working. Jack asked, "Why can't you tell one more?" I said, "Because we already agreed on how many." He cried and threw a tantrum, even pounding on me with his little fists as he shouted, "Uncle Ito would. Why can't you? Bad dad, you just don't like me." That time, I lost my temper badly. Willow was furious. She said resentfully, "Why are you arguing with a child? He doesn't understand. Do you not understand either?" I didn't argue with her. I simply told her, "Makoto is not allowed to have any contact with Jack from now on." I thought Willow had listened, but in the end, I realized she had only been hiding it from me. One morning, I was woken up by Willow's call. That day, I left first, and after that, I never saw Willow again. Only Sophia mentioned it casually. She said Willow had fainted from anger because of me, and Makoto carried her away. She said, "Well, thanks to you, we're really getting divorced now." I thought that my own divorce with Willow should probably be put on the agenda as well. Originally, I planned to contact her after I finished my work, but unexpectedly, Willow called me first. Her tone was full of impatience. "Jack went to find you." Before I could respond, she had already hung up. I took a deep breath and got up. When I opened the door, Jack was crouching against the wall with his little backpack on. I asked, "Why didn't you knock?" Jack lowered his head and said nothing. I stayed silent for 2 seconds, then stepped aside. "Come in." After a quick wash, I came out and saw Jack still standing in the middle of the living room. I asked, "Have you had breakfast?" "No." His voice was dull and muffled. I asked, "What do you want to eat?" I opened the fridge, half a bag of bread, 3 eggs, and a pack of luncheon meat, a sandwich. "Okay." Jack nodded. I said, "Put your bag down and wait at the table." I wasn't good at cooking, but making a quick breakfast should be easy enough. Soon, I brought out 2 sandwiches. I had mineral water, and I gave him a bottle of milk. Jack kept his head down as he ate. After just a few bites, tears began to drip down. He looked pitiful. I reached out, trying to take the sandwich from his hand. He held onto it tightly. I'm eating it. I softened my tone. Swallow what's in your mouth before you cry. Cry after that. Then keep eating. Jack looked at me, lips trembling, and suddenly burst into loud sobs. Through his tears, he said, "Dad, you've never made breakfast for me before," I said. "I've never made breakfast for myself either," Jack asked with teary eyes. "Why?" I replied. "Because what I make tastes bad. So when I want to eat, I usually just order takeout." Jack froze, looking confused. I pointed at the food on the plate and asked, "Still eating? If not, I'll throw it away. It tastes awful." I tossed my own portion into the trash first. Even I didn't understand how I could make something so simple taste this bad. I said, "I want dumplings." Jack blinked. "I want dumplings too." We reached an agreement instantly. I dumped his portion into the trash as well. I said, "Grab your backpack. We're heading out." Chapter 12. After breakfast, I took Jack with me to the company. While I was in the middle of a conference call, he pushed the door open. His little face flushed red. He opened his palm, revealing a lollipop inside. He said, "The tall uncle with glasses gave it to me." He was talking about David from the marketing department. When we entered the company earlier, we happened to run into him at the door. He smiled and exchanged a few pleasantries, mentioning that his wife had less than 2 months left before giving birth. So I nodded and said, "Go ahead and eat it." Jack sat on the sofa, swinging his legs. Less than half a minute later, he ran over and asked me, "Dad, that uncle's wife is pregnant." I typed as I replied, "Yeah, what about it?" He said, "If his wife is pregnant, why doesn't he go home and stay with his family?" My hands paused on the keyboard. Because he still needs to work and make money. He looked confused. Is work more important than family? I looked at Jack. I remembered what David had said last time. Once this project is done, I'll get a generous commission and a year-end bonus. Then I can finally go home without worries and stay with my wife for the birth. But later, the bid failed. Even if follow-up projects came in, they would still require time and energy. I had told him, "It's fine, go back first. I'll keep paying your salary." But he said, "No, President Wang, honestly, I'm anxious. There's the baby to deliver and raise, so many expenses, and who knows what else will come later. Right now, the most important thing for me is to earn money. I need to personally follow this project to feel at ease. Yes, prenatal checkups, nutrition, hospitalization, delivery, a maternity nanny, baby supplies, and later formula, diapers, early education, childcare, all of it costs money. At a time like this, if the man stops working to stay home, and something unexpected happens, there won't even be anyone left to hold things together. How could adults live in a world where they ignore pros and cons and only follow emotions?" I explained all this to Jack in the simplest way I could. He nodded thoughtfully, though who knew what he was really thinking. What's the point of telling Jack all this? Willow's voice came from behind. I wasn't surprised by her appearance at all. I smiled and said, "Then who should I tell? You. Even now, you still haven't told Jack that my failure had very little to do with him. It was all because of you." I pressed a hand lightly on Jack's head. I said, "What he did, aside from disappointing me, has no real impact on me. You're different, Willow. You manipulated things behind the scenes and prearranged the outcome. Don't you think you owe an apology to everyone who worked hard for it?" Willow pressed her lips together, her face full of indignation. "George, you should understand better than anyone, business is like a battlefield. If someone wins, someone loses. Can you really say your success wasn't taken from someone else? Do you go around apologizing to every competitor?" I let out a cold laugh and said, "Survival of the fittest, that's the norm in business. But stabbing your husband in the back to benefit someone else, that's breaking the rules of the game." Willow froze. She said, "There's nothing between Makoto and me. Why won't you believe me?" I bent down and looked at Jack. "Why did you hide that stocking?" "George," Willow shouted, her face flushing red, "why are you bringing this up?" I just looked at Jack. He grew flustered and afraid under my gaze. He said, I don't know. Uncle Ito kissed Mom. Jack." Willow's voice suddenly rose sharply. Jack threw himself into my arms and burst into tears. Willow's breathing became rapid as she said, "That was just a misunderstanding. My stocking got torn that day, so I took it off." "Jack, he just saw it wrong," she said. "George, no matter what, this is between us. We can talk it through. You shouldn't drag the child into this." I picked Jack up. I said, "When you and Makoto couldn't control yourselves, did you think about that? And now you're asking me not to. Isn't that a bit too much?" I didn't. Chapter 13. Willow's whole body trembled. Her beautiful face twisted slightly from anger and grievance. She had never imagined that George would leave. George was always there. Just like he once said, whenever she needed him, he would be there. Back then, after being hurt by Makoto, she drowned herself in alcohol. She told no one, only called George. He rushed over immediately. She cried her eyes out, tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain, while George sat beside her doing practice problems. Willow was unhappy and kept bothering him, either bumping into him or snatching away the paper he was working on. George said helplessly, "If you keep this up, I'm leaving." Willow snorted, unconcerned. George wouldn't leave, she was certain of it, but she stopped disturbing him and even helped him when he got stuck on a problem. George looked completely shocked. Willow lifted her chin proudly. "What? You thought you were just dumb at studying?" She was different from George. George was the type who buried himself in books, quick-minded, but clumsy in method, always digging himself into dead ends. Willow gave him a few pointers. It was like George had discovered a whole new world. Whenever he had time, he would discuss studying with her. He improved rapidly, so fast that even Willow began to feel a sense of crisis. Luckily. Later, when Willow asked, "Which university are you planning to apply to?" George replied without even looking up, "N University." Willow let out a breath of relief. Sure enough, he had chosen the same school as her. Later, Makoto got together with Sophia. They made it official online. That day, when Willow stood in the rain, lost and at a loss, an umbrella appeared above her head. "Come on, I'll take you for a ride." It was George's voice. Willow's heart softened instantly. She stood on tiptoe and kissed him. Someone once asked her, "What exactly is your relationship with George?" Willow answered stubbornly, "He's just my simp, what else could he be?" If that was how she defined it, then how would George define it? Willow once asked George, "If one day we ended things, what would you do?" George thought for a moment and said, "I'd leave." This answer didn't satisfy Willow. Almost out of spite, she nodded and said, "Fine, then we're done." She turned and left, going out drinking and singing with her friends. But when she returned to the place she rented off campus, all of George's belongings were gone. She couldn't find him anywhere, not in the academic building, not in the dorms. She had never felt that kind of pain before. Even when someone told her George had only gone to another city with his advisor for an academic conference, she still couldn't calm down. She rushed to that city, found George, and said pitifully, "I'll never say we're over again." Only after George nodded did she finally breathe a sigh of relief. Willow refused to admit it. She couldn't live without George. Just like these past days, the house without him felt suffocatingly empty. She couldn't see him, couldn't touch him, couldn't hold him. Willow started drinking again. Jack said, "Mom, stop drinking." He looked exactly like George when he said it. Willow wanted to tell George that there was nothing between her and Makoto. She wanted to make up with him, but George picked Jack up, took out a document from the drawer, and said, "This is the divorce agreement. Sign it, we're getting divorced." Chapter 14. Willow's expression froze in shock. She asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" "Divorce." The word came out of my mouth clearly and decisively. Willow held her breath, her voice trembling as she said, "Because of Makoto, or because of the ICE project." Fine, I'll go find." I shook my head and interrupted her. "No need." "But yes, it's because of Makoto, and also because of ICE, and also because of Jack. There are many reasons. The final conclusion is, I want a divorce." Willow took a deep breath and bit her lip. "I don't agree." I sat back in my chair and looked at her expressionlessly. "You're really strange. Why sneak around? Now Sophia and Makoto are already getting divorced. If you don't make your move now, what are you waiting for?" Willow's face turned pale and flushed at the same time. She shook her head. "There's nothing between me and him." I'd heard that line so many times my ears were practically numb. I said, "Suit yourself. If you won't agree, I'll file a lawsuit." "It's fine, we can drag this out slowly." Finally unable to take it anymore, Willow slammed the door and left. Jack, however, burst into loud sobs, choking on his cries. I patted his backside lightly and said, "Go play by yourself. I need to work." Jack looked up, his little mouth trembling, eyes full of tears. "Are you going to divorce Mom?" I nodded. "Yes." He asked, "Do you still want me?" I sighed and asked, "Who do you want to go with?" He said, "I can choose." "Yes." Jack hesitated. He liked Willow very much. That was normal. Children usually feel closer to their mothers. Not to mention Willow treated him well. He wasn't even 6 years old. He couldn't fully understand why his parents' relationship had broken down, or what it would lead to. Just like he couldn't explain why, after seeing his mother kiss someone else, he hid the item she had left behind. So I asked him, "Jack, why did you give my contract to Makoto?" Jack's lips trembled, but no words came out. I asked, "Did you just want to give it to him? Did he ask you for it? Or did your mom say something?" A 5 or 6-year-old wouldn't do something like this on their own, unless influenced by someone else. Jack shook his head. He said, "Mom called and said that if she helped Uncle Ito, Dad would be angry if he lost. So I gave it to him." So Mom wouldn't have to help him, and he wouldn't take Mom away from me. I don't want Mom and Dad to separate, I asked. Why? If your mom and I separate, he could become your new dad. Don't you like Uncle Ito? He makes toys for you, carries you to watch fireworks. You were pretty happy, weren't you? Jack shook his head even more fiercely and glared at me. I already have my own dad. I sighed and patted his shoulder. If your mom and I divorce, who you choose to stay with doesn't matter. She'll always be your mom, and I'll always be your dad, Jack said in a muffled voice. But you said that was the last lesson you'd teach me, so that's what this was about. I didn't know whether to laugh or be annoyed, I said. That's because I really lost my cool back then. I'm just an ordinary person too. I get angry and say things I don't mean. That's another lesson Dad wants to teach you. Before Jack is the son of Willow and George, he is first an independent person. And George, before being Jack's father, is also first an independent person. Chapter 15. Makoto bailed on everything. The divorce with Sophia had left him overwhelmed. At first, he was the one who demanded the divorce, and Sophia refused. Now that Sophia had agreed, he started going back on his word, asking why. Why should he let her have her way? Why should Sophia Kim get away without paying any price? Why should he, after slaving away for the Kim family for so many years, just walk away like that? He even came to confront me, face flushed with anger, demanding to know if I had said something to Sophia. Otherwise, why would Sophia, who had clearly been hesitant about the divorce, make up her mind after meeting me? I didn't have the time or patience to deal with him. I asked bluntly, seriously, man, I don't get it. Your wife just likes doing yoga and getting her hair done. What's the big deal? Makoto's eyes widened. Through gritted teeth, he said, George, we're both men. Don't tell me you don't understand. I shrugged and smiled. Yeah, we're both men. Of course I understand. So what's the difference between what you have with Sophia and what you have with Willow? Makoto, don't act like a fool in front of me. When you see me, keep your head down and stay the hell away. Willow still refused to agree to the divorce. I had already instructed my lawyer to prepare the documents and filed the lawsuit. At Jack's request, his custody would go to me. Willow's mother strongly opposed this. Of course, not because of the child, she said. You must leave with nothing. You signed a prenuptial agreement. A prenuptial agreement? Since when did I sign that? Willow avoided our gazes. In that instant, I understood. Willow's mother quickly realized it too. She stared in shock. You lied to me. You lied to me just to marry him. That's right. Back when Willow, Lou and I got together, the Lou family had strongly opposed it. For reasons similar to Makoto and Sophia's situation. We weren't from the same social class. I was an orphan, a poor student sponsored by the Lou family. What right did I have to marry their daughter? At the time, I didn't know about the prenuptial agreement, but thinking about it now, even if I had known, I would have signed it anyway. For an ordinary person, achieving upward mobility is incredibly difficult. The Lou family was the only ladder I could grab onto. What they could offer me wasn't just their inherent value, but more importantly, the resources and connections that only their class possessed. So for the sake of all that, what did it matter if Willow treated me like a simp who was always on call? So it was never that she approached me just to make Makoto jealous, it was that I had ulterior motives and deliberately got close to her. Whether she liked me or not had never been part of my consideration. Now, I was already in the game. Willow was just a boost. I could continue maintaining a polite and distant marriage with her, but only on the premise that she didn't drag me into endless trouble. Too much trouble. Now, the trouble Willow brought me had already outweighed the advantages the Lou family gave me. I didn't mind cutting things cleanly and quickly. In the first trial, the divorce was not granted. That was within my expectations. That was also why I was in such a hurry to push for the hearing. I needed to move things along quickly. I wanted to get to the second trial as soon as possible. And as soon as the first trial ended, the ICE project blew up. Chapter 16. Makoto's mind was no longer on his career. The project manager he hired abused his position for personal gain, embezzled nearly 10 million, and fled. Makoto simply dropped everything and ran as well. He said, "This was forced onto me by you in the first place. Now I'm giving it back to you." I don't know how Willow originally made her promise to her father, but I figure she probably feels like she's just eaten a pile of crap right now. Makoto left, and he made a decision. Drag Sophia down with him. He wouldn't agree to the divorce. Sophia, however, didn't care at all. She said, "You made me realize something. You said that if a person is the same after 10 years as they were 10 years ago, that's not right. Time moves forward. People change, from immaturity to maturity. How could there be no change at all?" But Makoto hasn't changed. He was immature and irresponsible 10 years ago, and he's still the same now. I raised my hand and interrupted her. I said, "Let's talk about work." There was no point continuing the conversation. Maybe Makoto had his own issues, but Sophia cheating on him was also indefensible. The difference was, she was openly messy about it, unlike Willow, who hid things and refused to admit them. Between her and me, our business relationship was already the limit. There shouldn't, and wouldn't, be anything deeper. After returning from City A, Willow came to see me again. This time, it wasn't about personal matters. She said her father wanted to outsource ICE to me. I didn't give her a direct answer, just said I'd think about it. Then I turned around and called David and Simon. The next second, President Wong. No problem. ICE, we're taking it. Chapter 17. Jack was about to graduate from kindergarten. For his first graduation ceremony in life, the teacher asked if any parents would like to come and give a sharing session. I took the job. That day, Willow was there too. I walked slowly onto the stage, holding a special house in my hands. The walls were made of semi-transparent wax paper stretched over a wooden frame, faintly revealing the interwoven structure inside. This was a model I had spent 3 days making, with Jack's help. I said, "Hello everyone, I'm Jack's father. My job is to make houses grow from blueprints. Today, what I've brought is a house that hasn't put on its clothes yet. Look here, this is the foundation. It's buried at the very bottom. You can't see it, but it's very important. Just like the things deep inside each of you, what you believe in, what you like, what you want to become, those are things others may not easily see, but they are what allow you to stand firm for a lifetime." I slowly, unhurriedly took the house apart piece by piece, then put it back together again, from whole to broken, and back to whole again, just like a person's life. In childhood, it seems complete, but that's only an empty shell. It needs the person themselves, others, and society to add bricks and build it up, until, in the end, it becomes a complete structure. Amid loud applause, I finished my speech. Jack was already standing, his little face flushed red, his eyes shining so brightly that Willow could hardly contain herself. When I stepped down, he threw himself into my arms. "Dad, you're the best dad in the world." That day, Willow and I acted as if nothing had ever happened, accompanying Jack through a perfect day. That night, after saying goodbye to us, Willow didn't go home. She went to a bar and drank herself into a stupor. In the early morning, she called me. Her voice was weak and powerless. She asked, "Why? Jack made you so angry, you even called the police, yet you still forgave him. Why can't you give me, Willow, one more chance?" I was woken from my sleep, my tone impatient, because in this world, the only person related to me by blood is Jack. As for you, there are plenty of women in this world. I don't educate, I select. Half a year later, Willow and I officially divorced. During that time, she tried to win me back, but aside from when she wanted to see the child, I never met her privately. She came to understand, there was no possibility left between us. When adults end a relationship, they convert all warmth into rational calculation. From then on, mountains high and rivers far apart, each goes their own way.